Machinist has been in trouble since Endwalker hit, with some groups even explicitly locking out Machinist from their groups, which is a true story. Even though thankfully I've been focused on healing the Savage tier, I see it very often in Party Finder and I'm just like, ooh, that burns. In this video, I really want to talk about how I think that we should fix the Machinist, and I've been thinking about it for weeks now, and I think that I've come to some pretty fair, ideas. Things that will not break the game, things that won't push the Machinist completely over the edge and trample over everyone else, and I think that this will actually have some very healthy effects even for including black mages in more party compositions. Yes, I did say black mages there. So first off, do I think that the Machinist needs rotational changes? Absolutely not. In fact, one of the best feelings of Final Fantasy XIV for me is Machinist rotation. It is basically like dopamine drip the rotation. It feels fantastic. You have those sharp bursts with reassembled drill. I even turned into a meme video, reassembled no drill, no juicy or whatever. It feels so good to have that big burst. And then you go into the hypercharged heat blast burst phase window with wildfire magnificently exploding. It is so intense and rewarding. And then you summon your big Omnic Butler Bob, and since this implementation has absolutely felt incredible, he absolutely adds to the Machinist class fantasy. So is this dopamine hit the rotation? 100%. And that's probably why I've learned to adore it so much, why I'm so attached to the Machinist. Like, I even got channel banner art of it. I love the Machinist. And then Endwalker, with the addition of the chainsaw skill, gave us yet another sharp dopamine hit and more big Omnic Butler to summon by giving us more energy gauge. I have nothing but compliments to say for how good the rotation feels. It feels like streamlined, sleek. Everything has a point to it. Gauss Round Ricochet feels really good. It all just feels great. I have nothing to complain about for it. But in terms of fixing Machinist, I have more ideas that I'd love to see than just simply buffing the Machinist damage. In fact, I think that that would be the easiest way out, and I don't think that it would actually solve some of the core problems that we have here, especially given some of the larger tapestry that I'm going to try and explain in this video about, like, physical range. DPS is just going to be, like, by design lower than other DPS. Like, you're not going to see the Machinist do the black mage's damage. If that happened, I think I would actually be shocked, because that would break design philosophies. Really just don't see the developers going that way, like, period. But some of these utility options that I'm going to bring up, I do think are going to be a little bit spicier, and they are kept in mind of being fair, of being balanced, of being things that I think that would really define the Machinist in its own niche without stepping on the toes of Dancer, Bard, or any other DPS or healer in the game. Things that would give you a meaningful choice to actually, like, pick the Machinist. And by meaningful choice, I don't mean like tongue-in-cheek, I mean like actual meaningful choice. Let's talk damage for a moment, and I'm going to keep it really brief because I realize that it's rather boring. I've already established this point, but I do believe it's worth mentioning very quickly here. One thing that has been clear from the developers was they wanted a lower damage threshold to be brought by ranged physical DPS. This is consistent even among Summoner, Red Mage, Dancer, Bard, and remember, Summoner and Red Mage also bring Revive. Machinist is also significantly behind even the second lowest DPS, which is Dancer, and it's almost as big of a gap between Machinist and Dancer, the lowest DPS Machinist and second lowest Dancer, almost as much of a gap between them as Black Mage, the #1 DPS, to Dancer, the second lowest DPS. That is how severe it is right now. This can make it a valid concern if your group can or cannot clear content when we talk about this big of a gap, and if you're pushing in rage in your group. For an 8-minute fight, 8,600 minus 8,000 DPS, and I'm not picking the lowest numbers. If you look at the numbers, I'm picking like good top machinists. Doing some quick math here, I know this is obvious to some people, but some people want me to explain, but you have 8 minutes multiplied by 60, which is going to give you the number of seconds because we're talking DPS damage per second, multiplied by 600, which is the difference of that, gives you nearly 290,000 DPS difference that you need to make up somewhere. That's playing the Machinist at an extremely high level. No, I am not cherry picking like the worst Machinist in the game. Then you throw in the Machinist doesn't bring barriers, heal over time effects, no abilities to cleanse debuffs to ease off pressure in things like the ultimate fight, literally the last ultimate fight, the Epic of Alexandria T, or multi-dotting targets, or tank heal amps, or mobility abilities, or amplifying Scholar's spread Adla, which is insanely powerful utility. That is a huge chunk of barrier there just from that. Or what about mobility abilities like Dancers and Avant, and yes, even Bards like Leap Back. Yeah, it takes a little bit to get used to it, but any experienced Bard, especially ones that are looking at going into the Epic of Alexander, know how to use that skill inside out and backwards. Now that gets me into the point of quote-unquote what is utility or no utility. And to be super clear by utility, I don't mean buffing damage. That I lump into raid DPS. That's damage you bring to the party, utilized poorly or not by your teammates. Who cares? But that is your raid DPS being represented poorly, basically. We're gonna quickly get into the argument, and I'm gonna run out of time in this video, so I'm gonna get through it really quick. Yeah, you can drive an old rusted out Bader wagon to get around from point A to point B in real life. You can drive it. You can do it just fine. Something without air conditioning, without soft seats, maybe it even has a screech in the right side of the car, no remote starter and the rest, and it'll get you just fine from point A to point B. It will drive you there. But for the majority of people, those perks are considerable and nice to have. Like, I don't think you'll find many people saying, yeah, bro, I'm bragging about driving through Arizona during the summer without air conditioning. People might just look at you like you're insane. Let's talk about how to actually fix it. But first, let's establish some baselines and operate under the mentality that the devs don't want the Machinist to do as much damage as the Black Mage or Samurai, the other two DPS that also don't bring any utility. That means that the Machinist needs to explore some utility options, but I desperately want to avoid the problem of overlapping utility in this instance. Or in other words, you will not get the Machinist dealing as much DPS as these DPS, so you better define the Machinist out in a different direction. And so this means that we need to also consider avoiding the problem of overlapping utility, because you don't want the Machinist stepping on the Bard or the Dancer's toes. On that note, I'm not going to recommend something like give the Machinists the old Palisade ability back, because I feel that that steps too much on the toes of Bard's nature Melee of helping sustain a single target, even though any team composition with a Bard or Scholar can tell you that it goes way further than that, especially because I've played Scholar now and I played Bard before. That extra 20%, I don't know how else to say it, on a deployed crit low barrier every 90 seconds, because those cooldowns do line up, makes Nature's Melee one of the most powerful raid utilities any DPS can bring, period. Mechanics, where? You will see that brought out, guaranteed that combo for Dragon Song's Reprise Ultimate as a combo, almost guaranteed. You will see it. There will be groups that literally explicitly plan some of their mitigation strategies around that combo. We want to avoid further discussion about Nature's Melee because you guys know I could go on and on and on about that, but point is, it's super strong and I don't want to undersell it, but that's the kind of utility that we're looking at a different DPS already bringing. Spicy recommendation number one, and this will actually be fair and healthy for the game and actually help out people, is let's give Machinist a revive. And before you go into the comment section and tell me to die in P3S's arena, which still makes my eyes tear up from the brightness, oh my god, hear me out on this one. So Machinist can have something like Defibrillator to make it make sense lore-wise, and then to balance it out mechanically to avoid the current Red Mage or Summoner problems where you can just keep churning out revives. Yes, I know Summoner only has one Swift cast, I get it, but you can keep spamming revive if you really want to hardcast. Defibrillator, unlike them, has a cooldown of 5 minutes similar to Angel's Whisper from Blue Mage. This means that the Machinist won't be able to spam it, but anyone who has done prog knows that one extra revive can make all the difference. People will be like, but Cole, Red Mages and Summoners are the only DPS that should revive. Says who? I'm actually going to disagree, and this is why I said Black Mage at the start of this video, is there are some very serious problems that people seem to be dancing around or not bring up because it's taboo, because people are worried about, like, oh no, people not like me bringing it up. But fact is, Black Mage is actively selected against during prog by most groups that are going to be honest with you. If you go into a candid Discord conversation with a lot of the people who are even raiding on Twitch, they will tell you, yeah, we actively would prefer a Red Mage or a Summoner over a Black Mage. Why? It's not because of the damage being low, but the damage that the Black Mage brings doesn't outweigh a revive that a Red Mage or a Summoner can do for prog. Fact. I don't know what kind of elitist person who is gonna hoity-toity put themselves on a pedestal that's gonna disagree with that, but a revive during prog is a big frickin' deal. Do you need it? No. Is it incredibly convenient? Yes. Saved runs. When both healers are dead, who's gonna revive the healers? Oh, there's incoming AoE damage? Well, you have no revivers, so better wall to fight. So unironically, giving a different DPS role, and by different DPS role, I mean the literal lowest DPS in the game currently, which is Machinist, the revive utility, would unironically open up more space for Black Mages in group compositions. And so yes, this actually does help more than just the Machinist. I'm sure that that will not help the deluge of comments telling me that I'm wrong and that I should die, but you would be hard pressed to find anyone in raid sincerely tell you this isn't the way it is. There's going to be people who might watch this video on Twitch that are going to try and hoity-toity raise themselves up, but you know what? I bet during their prog that they will have a Red Mage or a Summoner in their party. This is the way it is. Talk to anyone candidly who's being honest. This is the way it is. There are a few unicorns through the community, and by a few I mean I can think of 3, but through community, even especially the average raider, red mage or summoner is actively selected for and black mage against for this reason. For progression, I'm not talking optimization, I'm talking about progression. And when we're talking about an ultimate raid around the corner, the intense majority of that is progression. I'm talking about a streamed Hesperos fight that they have cleared for like 2 months now, and just like so bored that they're going on Black Mage. We're talking about prog. Also, if you talk to most people, the meta is, and it's a loose meta, it's not as strong as other games metas, but the meta in 14 is 2 melee, 1 range physical, 1 caster, and that's the overwhelming meta. This allows 1 caster spot, and so giving Machinist Revive would allow that flexibility. The second utility that I think could be fantastic is MP Restoration, and we have a history of these skills in 14 through the years, with promotion to restore party MP to the range DPS roll action, refresh to restore party MP. Do I value party MP restoration? No, because to be frank, Black Mage can't take advantage of it. Sure, Red Mage could take advantage of it. Red Mage would be one candidate. Obviously, it's more for the healers than anyone else, though. So, alternative that I think would even be satisfying enough would be, we used to have a single target MP restoration through mana shift. Yes, I know that was caster, not range DPS, but I think that the mana shift being put for Machinist would be good. And this code already exists, and as someone who raided through these years, these abilities consistently proved invaluable. The rebuttal that I expect to this is that these aren't necessary for progression. They never were necessary for progression, which is fantastic. No utility should be mandatory. Healers can stack more piety. How many healers are going to be in my comment section screaming and reading over that? And healers can objectively limp to the finish line after dying, as their MP pool never goes above 4,000 because they're at 600 piety and they're just like, oh my god, I'm dying here. Glaring at the lucid dreaming cooldown. Now, is NPN as restoration a valid, useful utility? 100%, I will absolutely say yes. Whether people want to admit it or not, in a progression environment, healers die. Amazing. Imagine dying during progression. Holy. But in that same environment, it can be excruciatingly hard to recover MP to properly progress. Speaking with so many other healers and my own experience, because I wasn't with an AST, facts is P3S has a mechanic called Life's Agonies. If one of the healers, especially when we weren't overgeared, died right before that mechanic, or had weakness or not enough MP, that was a slog. I can do it now, but I do have more gear now than I did originally. But oh my god. Limping. Even in general, outside of that super specific mechanic, literally every single other healer that I've spoken to feels the same way. Even when I think about E12S, Terminal Relativity before the Echo, before you outgeared it, oh lordy. Limping. Death on a healer, in my opinion, feels way more severe to recover from during prog than any other job, especially at this point in the game. Old Summoner back in the day was actually somehow worse, if you can believe it. I'm not going to get into the history lesson, but healer right now is the worst. So essentially, a Machinist would have these abilities in their back pocket to alleviate healer pressure, and in a unique way, while bards and dancers focus on barriers and heals and status cleanses, which is highly relevant, especially in Epic of Alexander and E8S, and probably in Dragon Song's Reprise. I'd be shocked if they didn't have like a Mass Asuna for one mechanic. Machinist would approach this utility and supporting the team in its own very different way. Under this context, with these two different utility lines, MP Restoration and some form of Revive, would I see the Machinist needing its DPS bumped up way and above the current range DPS category? Maybe it even wouldn't need a DPS buff with these two. No, I wouldn't see the Machinist needing that much of a DPS buff. I think that these two utility lines alone define the Machinist in its own niche and give it reasons to be picked based on its own merit, rather than simply a lower DPS with no utility, no mobility, bard, or dancer, because that's what people are describing it as. Well, do you hate having utility? Do you hate having extra mobility abilities? Do you enjoy doing less DPS than those that do? Well, Machinist is the class for you. What, you're not sold? I really do believe, even if you didn't implement both MP Restoration and Revive, one of them alone would help. And I, in particular, am really leaning towards the Revive. Why I say this is because it's just like, okay, we have a Black Mage that we want to play with. They don't want a Red Mage during prog. They don't want a Summoner during prog. Well, you know what? We really want the Revive during prog because it really helps. Well, you have this alternative here. Is it going to be, like, amazing as Red Mage? No. But it's at least going to have some option. Like, if it's on a 5-minute cooldown like Angel's Whisper, Machinist will never outperform Red Mage and Revive, but it gives you an option. That's really what I think would be fair.